Hi, welcome to Hey Parents, Let's Chat, where the more we share, the more we learn, and the better parents we become. So, for today's chat, I wanted to do a follow up on our video Helicopters, Mama and Papa Bears, and Lawnmowers. Um, I feel like there's an important conversation to be had. Sure, we discussed all of the titles and the pros and cons, but as a parent, that's kind of just a shallow conversation. If we want to dig deeper into that, I think the question really becomes how we can balance between being overprotective and supervising everything versus allowing them to fail and allowing them to have independence. So you can go from one extreme to another, but where do we find balance in the middle? Um, if you allow your children to fail too many times, do they think that failure in lower standards becomes acceptable? If we push them too hard with unrealistic expectations, do they always feel like they could never achieve our standards? I just feel like this is a much deeper question that is really harder to answer. Is how do we balance with good parenting, allowing them to fail, but then having them not think that failure is acceptable? It's really, really hard. And at what ages is it appropriate to, be pushing and supervising and then allowing for independence? And so I think it's really hard. I'm going to use school as an example, right? If you know that your student is working on a project and they're not giving it their full effort, do we step back and just let it happen? Or do we intervene and make sure that they are on track, doing the very best that they can? If we're doing one all of the time, then we're probably, whether it's one extreme or the other, then we're probably doing a disservice. But then where do we find that balance, right? And I'm going to apologize. My dog, Sai, is down here moaning and groaning because he's missing his buddy who has gone on some errands with my husband. So if you hear my dog moaning, that's my dog, Sai. Sorry, just keeping it real here, people. This is not perfection around here. Anyway, getting back to our conversation, I feel like I've learned, right, through all of my experiences, and I feel like I've sort of figured it out where I wish I had had this knowledge while my children were growing up. Because I feel like when my children were in their elementary years, I was really on top of things and I really made sure that they strived to do their best, and I emphasized not necessarily the grades, but I emphasize the effort. And if you're putting your effort in and that's the best grade that you can get, well, then I'm okay with that. And that was just my philosophy. Everyone has different standards, different philosophies. But looking back, I think I probably should have allowed them a little bit more experience with failure during their elementary years. I feel like, and I'm going to say this, I feel like during your elementary school age years, those are like almost like your science experiment years because they're a little bit more influential, influenceable. Whereas once they get into the middle school and high school years, they're less likely to listen to you. Shocking. And so I feel like as parents, we really need to front load in our investment during the elementary school age years. For instance, if your child is slacking off on their spelling homework and they're not studying their spelling words, you know what? Allow them to fail. Spelling test in 4th grade, who cares, right? That is not going to make or break whether they get into college or not, but it will be a good lesson learned. And so I feel like it is during the elementary years when you want to allow that failure to happen. And having said that, I don't think it should happen all of the time, certainly, because we don't want them to think that our standards are lower and that's acceptable. I do think they need to have clear expectations as to what your standard is, whether it's hard work or whether it's grades, because you're going to know your child's potential. You can set those standards. That's not what this conversation is about. But I do think that allowing them to fail during their elementary years isn't going to make or break them academically, but the emphasis should then be on how do we react to it. I, looking back, wish I had spent more time on how does it feel to fail versus, wow, I hope you do better next time, right? I feel like when kids have made mistakes, they need to sort of simmer in that feeling and realizing, wow, I really don't want to go through that again. Or, I really wish I had worked harder. Those are important lessons for them to have sink in and to learn from versus what their grade was. Okay? On the flip side of that, when you see your kid working hard, might be like a project. I remember when my kids were in 5th grade, they had to make these huge volcanoes. It took like a week. And at the end of the week of this project, they're making this project and they were going to explode them at school. It was a huge, big deal. And they worked super, super hard. And I remember really having conversations with them. Oh my gosh, this is so fun. And at the end of the week, didn't it feel good to work hard? And look at what you've accomplished. Look at this amazing volcano. And then talking to them after they erupted the volcano. Oh my gosh, tell me all about it. Was it fun? Did you have a good time? Did it feel good to be successful? And so focusing on how did it feel versus what was your grade, because I feel like those are lessons that are going to sink in and really resonate with your kids early on. And again, here we're front loading our investment so that those lessons hopefully will be internalized and stick with them into their middle school and high school years. This is just an analogy, and this isn't anything to do with school or anything, but about 10 years ago, when my kids were younger, I didn't really care so much about what we were eating. We had a pretty varied diet. We ate healthy, but then we didn't always eat healthy. And whenever we were taking road trips, it was always McDonald's. 10 years in, about 10 years ago, I was like, you know what, we're done with this. We're going to start eating healthy. And I got on the healthy bandwagon and blah, blah, blah. And I made a point any time we went to eat at fast food. And we really slowed down on it once we hit the healthy bandwagon. And we weren't doing it very often. But when we did, I always made a point of being like, oh my gosh, this makes me feel so sluggish. Guys, does this make you feel good? How does this make you guys feel? And they were always like, oh, God, that tasted so good. Oh my gosh, I feel like crap. And so I always emphasized with them that crappy feeling. And to this day, as my kids right now are 21 and 19, they rarely ever go to McDonald's because they understand it feels like crap. And so this is just an analogy. I feel like looking back and having learned, I wish I had spent more time on how does it feel to fail versus what was the grade. Or how does it feel to be successful? Doesn't this feel awesome? After a healthy meal, I would often make comments, I feel full, but I don't really feel like that gross full, where I don't feel like I need to go take a nap. I just feel really good full. And so, again, it's those conversations about how we feel. And so I feel like when my children were in their elementary years, I wish I had allowed them to fail a little bit more. And then followed up with those conversations. Having said all of this, I have to tell you that my children right now are very successful in their own rights. They're both doing very different things. And I'm very proud of them. My daughter is graduating with a bachelor's degree in 3 years from a university. My son has his CDL license, and he is a trucker working full time, doing a fabulous job. He bought a house at 20, which, like, for his age, and I mean completely on his own, is phenomenal. He is a hard worker. Both of my kids, very hard workers, but um, during those middle school and high school years, it was not easy academically to get them to work hard and to do well in school. And so, having said that, I should clarify my daughter was always really good at it. My son was like pulling teeth. He had better things to do than school. And so, I feel like if I had paid attention to more of those lessons during their elementary years a little bit more, it would have paid off more and made high school a little bit easier. And I'm thinking that it might have made my son a little bit more engaged, a little bit more invested. Again, playing Monday morning quarterback here, who knows? But these are my thoughts. And now I kind of want to know what your thoughts are. How do we balance between allowing them to fail, being independent, learning their own lessons, versus over supervising our kids and always wanting them to do super well? How do we find our middle ground? If you have had experience with this, would love to know your thoughts. So add your comments to this conversation. Hopefully we can learn from each other. Hopefully some of those younger parents who have toddlers right now and are entering kindergarten and have school-age children can learn from our conversations. Again, I wish that I had had these sort of conversations earlier on. I think it would have been super helpful. So let's help each other. Let's chat. And find your comment sections, add to this conversation so that we can learn from each other. If you find value in our conversations, which I really hope that you do, please subscribe, follow, like, invite others to join, share the videos with others. The more we share, the more we learn, and the better parents we become. So again, thank you for joining us, and I look forward to our next chat.